the man born blind. They saw him as a punishment for sin, but I saw him as an opportunity to reveal my glory in the mud and the clay. I walked through the streets of Jerusalem, and my heart knew the sorrow of the city. I saw the faces of the hungry and the sick, the ones who carried the weight of their sins and the sins of their fathers. They lived in a world of judgment, where every affliction was a cosmic ledger entry. This was the lens through which they saw the world, and, in turn, how they saw themselves. I walked among them, and my purpose was to shatter that lens. As I neared the temple, I saw him. He was a familiar figure to me, though the world saw him as just a part of the landscape. He sat by the gate, a man in a worn tunic, his face turned towards the sun he could not see. The sun's warmth was the only light he had ever known, and the feel of the coins placed in his hand was his only connection to the world of commerce. He was not a man named Bartimaeus to the people. He was simply the man born blind. His life was a quiet, unassuming existence defined by two things: his lack of sight and the public conviction that his blindness was a punishment. I heard their whispers and the hushed tones of mothers pulling their children away. He was born that way, they would say, as if his very existence was a theological problem to be solved. They saw him as a blank page on which to write their theories of justice and retribution. He was a symbol of sin, a public testament to a moral code that had become more important than compassion. I watched him as I walked. He knew the sounds of the temple, the call of the merchants, and the rhythmic footfalls of the priests. He had a map of the world in his mind, built from sound and touch and the memories of a darkness he had never known. His hands, nimble and sensitive, could feel the texture of the cobblestones and the weight of a coin. He was not a man without a world. He was a man who inhabited a different world, one unseen by those around him. And in that different world, he had found a quiet rhythm, a resignation that felt like peace, but was, in truth, a deep and unyielding despair. He had accepted the story they had written for him. And that was the saddest thing of all. I saw the silent ache in his heart, the longing for a light he could not imagine, a light that was more than the warmth of the sun on his face. He didn't ask for a miracle, for he had long since given up on that. He had come to terms with the story they had written for him, the story of his blindness. But I had a different story in mind. His life was not meant to be a punishment. It was meant to be a revelation. And so, the time had come to reveal it. I had just come from the temple, and as I walked, my disciples followed close behind. They were good men, but they were still bound by the same assumptions as the rest of the world. They saw the man by the gate, and the eternal debate of their culture arose in their minds. One of them, I believe it was Philip, voiced the question they all had. "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Their question was not one of compassion, but of curiosity. It was a theological test. They saw him not as a person in need of help, but as a living question, a cosmic riddle that they wanted me to solve. They had been taught that all suffering had a cause, a clear and traceable line back to a transgression. In their minds, there was no other explanation. I knew in that moment that this was a perfect opportunity to correct their flawed vision. I stopped and looked at the man. He was still in his world of darkness and sound, unaware that his life was about to become the subject of a new, divine action. I felt his resignation, the years of quiet despair, and I knew that what I was about to do would not only heal his body, but would shatter the theological prisons of the people around him. My answer to their question was not what they expected. I did not give them a history of his sin or his parents' sin. I gave them a new truth, a truth that had been hidden since the foundation of the world. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, I said, my voice carrying a tone of finality. He was born blind so that the works of God might be revealed in him. The words landed on them like a stone. Their theological framework, their entire understanding of justice and retribution, was suddenly rendered useless. I had taken their neat and tidy explanation and had shown them a purpose they could not have imagined. His blindness was not a consequence of sin. It was a prelude to glory. It was an opportunity, a stage set for a divine revelation. Then, I performed an action that must have seemed strange to them. I bent down and spat on the ground. The disciples, the crowd, they all watched as I took the dirt of the earth, the very dust from which man was made, and mixed it with my spittle. I knelt before him and gently, carefully, I rubbed the paste on his eyes. It was a humble act, a simple act, a direct act. I was not a magician or a distant healer. I was a man who used the most common elements of the earth to begin a work of profound intimacy. The crack had begun. The world would never be the same again. The man's world was a silent, anxious place. The air had changed. He could feel the tension, the silence of the crowd, the weight of their eyes upon him. He didn't know who I was, but he knew I had just done something profoundly strange and deeply personal. The feel of the mud on his eyes was a testament to that. He had spent his life being judged and ignored, but now he had been seen and touched. The moment had come. I knew that I could simply heal him with a word, as I had done so many times before. But this was different. This was not just about restoring sight. It was about an act of faith, a step taken in the dark, a choice to be a participant in his own healing. The miracle was not just about me. It was about him. Go. I told him, my voice a calm authority that cut through the tension of the moment. Wash in the pool of Siloam. I knew the weight of those words. The pool of Siloam was a long way from the temple. It was a journey of considerable difficulty for a man who had never seen the winding, chaotic streets of Jerusalem. To obey my command, he would have to publicly embrace his faith. He would have to walk through the city with mud on his face, an object of ridicule and curiosity. What if he went and nothing happened? What if it was all a cruel joke? He had a choice to make, a choice that would determine not only his healing, but the very nature of his new life. I could feel his hesitation, the years of conditioning weighing him down. He had been taught that his only place was on the mat, his only role to receive. To get up and walk was to reject that entire identity. It was to take a step into the unknown. He was at a breaking point, a moment of profound internal struggle. He could stay, and his life would remain a quiet, resigned despair. Or he could act and step into a new, terrifying, and beautiful reality. My command was not a suggestion. It was a challenge. It was a test of his faith, a call to a higher purpose. I did not give him sight. I gave him an opportunity to receive it. He had to be a part of the miracle. He had to take the first step, and I watched as his heart made a choice. He pushed himself to his feet, and the world held its breath. His blindness was no longer a state of being, but a journey. The journey to the pool of Siloam was a public spectacle, and I watched it unfold from a distance. The man, covered in the mud from my hands, stumbled and shuffled through the streets. People stared. They pointed. They whispered. Some laughed, seeing him as a fool, a desperate man clinging to a false hope. But I saw him as a man of great faith. He was a living testament, a walking sermon, a man who had chosen to trust a voice and a word he could not see. He reached the pool, his body weary, his spirit determined. He descended into the cool, dark water and slowly, meticulously, began to wash the mud from his eyes. As the last of the clay dissolved, the light began to break through. It was not a sudden burst, but a slow, unfolding, a gentle awakening. The world did not appear as a sudden image, but as a gradual revelation. I watched as his eyes, for the first time, opened to the physical world around him. He saw the colors, the vibrant blues and greens, the deep browns of the earth. He saw the shimmering light of the sun on the water. He saw the faces of the people around him, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. He saw his own hands, the hands that had always been his window to the world, and for the first time he saw them as they truly were. The shift was complete. His physical darkness was replaced by a physical sight. But the miracle was so much more than that. He had gone from being an object of debate to a man of action. He had gone from a life of passive resignation to a life of active, joyful participation. The man who had been a living testament to sin had just become a living testament to my glory. The world was now open to him, a vibrant, glorious place, and he had been given the keys to a kingdom he could not have imagined. He was no longer just a man born blind. He was a man with a new story, and that new story was about to be put to the test. The miracle was a scandal. The people who had known him all his life were now in a state of chaos. They didn't know how to react. Some were full of joy, others were full of suspicion. The Pharisees, the very men who had questioned his existence, were now interrogating him. They were more interested in the violation of their laws than in the revelation of my glory. They saw the miracle as a threat to their authority, and so they began to question its legitimacy. I watched as he faced them, a simple man with a truth that was more powerful than all their theological arguments. They tried to confuse him. They tried to get him to deny what had happened. They called his parents to the stand, seeking to discredit his story. But he held firm. His purpose was clear: to be a witness, to testify to the truth of what had happened to him. "How are your eyes opened?" they demanded. And he gave them a simple answer, a truth that cut through all their lies and all their religious dogma. "A man named Jesus made mud and put it on my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed and received my sight." He spoke with a newfound authority, an authority that came from an undeniable experience. They could not argue with what he said. They could only reject it. They questioned him further, but he remained resolute. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't know who I was or where I was from. But he knew one thing, and it was the only thing that mattered. "One thing I do know," he said, his voice ringing with conviction, "that though I was blind, now I see." In that moment, he had found his purpose. He was no longer a beggar. He was a man of truth, a man of courage, a man who stood for the glory of God against the blindness of man. He had found his voice, and he was using it to tell his story, a story that was a testament to my power. In their anger, they cast him out of the synagogue, a final act of rejection. But I knew that their rejection was his ultimate liberation. He had been cast out of their world, but in doing so, he had stepped fully into mine. I did not abandon him. I sought him out, a man who was now a stranger in his own land, an outcast for my sake. I found him in a quiet place, a man who had left the darkness of his mat for the light of a new life, and was now learning to live with the consequences of his truth. He had lost his physical community, but he had gained something infinitely more valuable. "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" I asked, and his eyes, the eyes that had just seen the world for the first time, now saw me in a new way. He didn't see a miracle worker or a healer or a rabbi. He saw the truth, the light, the source of his new life. "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" he asked. I smiled. The man who was once a theological puzzle had become a son. "You have seen him," I said. "Is the one speaking with you?" And in that moment, in the presence of the one who had given him sight, his heart was fully opened. He knelt before me and said, "Lord, I believe." The miracle was not his healing. The miracle was his worship. His life had been transformed from a story of sin to a story of salvation. His blindness, which they had seen as a punishment, was simply a prelude, a stage set for a glorious and profound revelation. He had received not only his sight, but a new purpose, a new identity, and a new home. He was a son, and he was a witness. He was a man who was once blind, but now he truly saw. And in his sight, the world was given opportunity to see me. "Hello, my beloved children. I see you, and I know your deepest sorrows. Many of you are sitting on a mat of despair, a place you've been for a very long time, believing your pain is a punishment or a fixed part of who you are. The world may look at your struggles and wonder, whose fault is this? But I want you to know the truth I saw in the man born blind. Your condition is not the final word. I tell you, your suffering is not a consequence of sin, but an opportunity for my glory to be revealed in you. Just as I took the dust of the earth and the clay of the ground, I can use the broken and difficult parts of your life for a divine purpose. Don't let your past define you. Your greatest weakness is about to become a testament to my greatest power. Your story is not one of punishment, but one of revelation. So, I give you a command today. Get up and wash away the shame that has held you in darkness for so long. This is an invitation to a new life, a terrifying and beautiful reality that awaits your first step of faith. Do not wait for someone else to carry you to the pool. You have the strength to begin this journey yourself. This is your moment to choose action over resignation. I know the fear that comes with change and the rejection you may face from those who don't understand the light you now see. When a man born blind was healed, they cast him out of his community because they feared the very miracle he embodied. But listen to this truth. When they cast you out of their world, you are stepping directly into my embrace. You are not losing a community, you are gaining a family. Remember your past not as a prison, but as a testimony. Your blindness, your struggles, your despair. These are no longer your identity, but the very tools you will use to glorify my name. You are a living testament to a God who found you in the darkness and told you to walk in the light. Your final story is one of victory, a life lived in freedom and purpose.